Howdy folks, I'm nonchalant northern blue, naturally nomming on nutritious nectar.
I'm Amber.
And here's more nutritious nectar for us to nom away on. Fortunately, we're staying away from the bees, because the bees don't like it when we nom on their nectar. So, let's get started. Alright folks, and our first letter is titled, Am I a jerk for not taking my father's minor children into consideration when I sued him for the inheritance that he stole from me? So my mom died when I, a 22-year-old female, was 10, and in her will, she left me an inheritance of more than $100,000. My dad was left in charge of it, but after he remarried, him and his wife wanted to start a business together, and they used the money mom left me to open it. Dad and I argued about it at the time, but I was 15, and he kept insisting it was good for the whole family, and how it was better used to help everyone than being thrown away on random stuff when I turned 18. Our relationship was over before I moved out of the house at 18. I had made him and his wife's life miserable for stealing from me, and once I was out of there, I looked into how I could get that money back. I pressed charges against him for stealing from me, and I sued him for the money. I had the support of my entire extended family on my maternal side and some on my paternal side, but I was told by others on the paternal side to consider my dad's other kids and the devastation that kind of financial upheaval could bring. I ignored those comments. I knew that waiting would ever prevent me from getting the money, and I honestly did not care about his family's financial security after being stolen from. It was a long process, and I needed to return to court a few times because he was just like, I can't pay. I don't have the money anymore. In the end, they were forced to give up the business, and it was sold to pay me the money back. And he had to pay additional out of his paycheck, which made him empty their savings, so his wages weren't garnished anymore. By the time that I got it back, I was 100% done and past the point where we could ever reconcile. He made me fight so hard for what was legally mine and stole my money that my mom left to me to support his new family. My relationship with some of Dad's side is not so strong anymore, and they think that it was wrong that I focused only on what he did and not the effects for the kids. I mostly don't talk to those family members now, but they ask me how I feel zero guilt for it when the kids are innocent and they are still my siblings technically. That they would have thought that I would want better for them. I don't feel bad, I never have, but am I the jerk for not taking the kids into consideration? Is that something that I should have done? I feel like this is just a really unfair situation to me and locks me into never being paid back. I don't think that I owe those kids that. All right, folks, what do you think?
Not the jerk. And this is a very strange system that they're putting into place. Like, oh, we can never prosecute a criminal who has family because it would affect the kids. Like,
Yeah.
it is unfortunate that it affects the kids, but that doesn't mean that we can just ignore criminal activities. Opie's father stole from them and took money that was rightfully theirs and refused. They knew what they were doing was wrong and illegal, and they did it anyway. And so Opie was well within their right to get back the inheritance that was rightfully theirs. These relatives are more than welcome to help and step up and help the kids all they want. Like they can do something for the kids if they want to, but they shouldn't be sitting here guilt tripping OP.
You know, the thing is that if OP had agreed and allowed their father to take that money, and they still weren't able to get it back at 18, then that would be a little bit of a different situation. I mean, I still think the dad should do everything in his power to pay back that money, but the fact of the matter is that it's hard to know whether the dad ever had any intention of paying back the money at all, right? Because the way he kind of phrased it was like, it's better if we spend it on the family
Mm-hmm.
than for you to waste it on frivolous stuff when you're 18, right? And I do feel bad that this didn't work out and that the kids might suffer. But I don't think that is OP's problem here because OP was not the adult in the situation, right? They weren't the one who made the bad financial decision.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't the one who took money that didn't belong to them. And everyone who's trying to put this on OP to feel guilty about this, I think is, misguided in a lot of ways. they could have helped out with a financial situation, or maybe they could have co-signed on a loan to help pay back the $100,000, or any number of things to prevent the father from having to give the money back, right? But they chose not to do that. I'm sure OP would have been fine if people had come together and said, look, we just don't want we don't want a lot of trouble here. So what we're going to do is we're going to help pay back the money and make sure that whatever you get, you're owed, right? But instead, they just let OP and the father drag this through court and into, a messy business and stuff like that. So I don't know. I just don't have too much problem with what OP did. They were, really under the impression they were never going to get that money back, it feels like.
Well, and it seems like they never would have gotten it back if not for going to court because the dad, dragged his heels every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that does not give me warm fuzzies about him ever. It seems like he felt entitled to that money because he was the adult. He needs it more. He deserves it more.
Yeah.
And that money was never his to begin with.
Yeah. But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. And Eeyore5775 says, now the jerk, did any of your dad's family ever try to guilt him for stealing your money? Where was the outrage then? And OP replies, the people who supported me did try to talk him out of it and called him disgusting for stealing from his kid. They said that he was playing into the stereotype of the remarried dad. Like, none of this would have happened had he just actually not taken the money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really what's the most important thing out of all of this, is that the only reason why he had to dip into his savings and had to sell off his business was because he violated OP's will to begin with.
Right. He decided to thieve. He decided that he was entitled to OP's money when he wasn't legally, and if he didn't steal, this wouldn't have happened.
And Dixie Chick says, I don't understand why that money wasn't set up in a trust for you to receive when you turned 18. Then he couldn't have touched it. And Opie replies, my mom likely trusted my dad and probably believed that the will was more than enough. And here for the tardy says, so your dad legally could do whatever he wanted with the money. I don't really see how you could ever sue him for this. And Opie replies, because it was willed to me, he was taking care of it for me until I was turning 18. Got some real lawyers in the comments here. And Bitterberry says, not a jerk, but I guess you did choose money over family. Sometimes it has to be done. Don't know all the nuances with your family, but there's no going back now. Not worth losing sleep over. And Opie replies, actually, my dad did. By stealing from me, he chose money over the family. He didn't need to steal from me. He wasn't worried about our family relationship when he did it. All right, folks, and our next letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Having a Test on the First Date and Ending Things Right After, if not past? I've noticed a pattern when I go on dates with men. I tend to ask a lot of questions because I'm genuinely curious about other people and their lives. I love learning about what makes someone who they are, and I've noticed that when I show this level of interest, men usually really like me. But the thing is that it's often one-sided. Many of them don't ask me a single thing in return. Literally not even basic stuff like what I do or what I'm interested in. One time I went on a first date where I asked all the questions. I tried to keep the conversation going, and the second that he was done talking about himself, things would go silent. He made no effort to get to know me at all. If I hadn't told him my name, I honestly don't think he would have known it. And after all that, I ended it. And he was devastated. But in my head, that date showed that he had zero interest in me and my opinion. I think that to truly understand someone, you need to be curious and intrigued. Maybe I crave to be understood and need attention, but I think that it's rude not to seem interested in me at all. This happened to me multiple times, and now I've started to see it as a bit of a test. If a guy doesn't ask anything about me, I don't want to move forward. So am I the jerk for this game and ending things early if a guy shows no interest in who I am? All right, folks, what do you think?
No, not the jerk. And I wouldn't really say that this is a game or a test. Like, generally, relationship tests are these artificial scenarios designed to find something sneaky about a person.
Yeah, exactly.
This is just seeing if you're compatible or not.
Yeah.
You want to be treated like an equal, like someone who was as interesting to your partner as they are to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find someone who basically only wants to talk about themselves and can't be bothered to ask you basic getting to know you questions, you're not going to be compatible long term because they're not invested in you.
I mean, what OP is doing and describing here is called carrying a conversation,
Yeah.
right? She's doing all the work in that conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is a difficult place to be in. And anyone who's ever had to carry a conversation knows how exhausting it can be to sit there and try to make conversation for the only other person only to just shut down and not say anything at all. It's frustrating, it's annoying, and it can be downright just maddening for someone to treat you like that. No, OP is not a jerk for having standards, right? Like, you do not have to carry a conversation. You do not have to show interest in someone, and you can break up with someone or not go on any other dates with someone for any reason you want. Even if it just happens to be, I don't like their pineapple shirt. I think that that's dumb or something like that, right? Like, that, at a certain point, like, sure, maybe that example is like a little weird and petty, right? But you're allowed to set deal breakers.
Well, that's it exactly. You're allowed to have deal breakers, and I mean, this is just kind of giving OP a sense of what kind of life they will be in for if they go along with this.
Mm-hmm.
If they just ignored their gut instinct and was like, I'll just go with this guy who doesn't listen to me. When is he ever going to listen to you? Like, if he can't be bothered to take interest in you on the first date, why is he going to be interested, like, 6 months in, 2 years in, 10 years in?
Well, I mean, it's just showing that these guys who she's going on dates with have no personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
They just have never taken time to develop a personality and figure out something interesting, right? Like, it's just like, you can't carry yourself on looks alone here, right? Unless you're, super handsome, right? If you're a 10 out of 10 type of guy, an Adonis, you're going to need something more than just your physical looks. You're going to need a personality, cultivate a personality, become an interesting person who's interested in other people. Otherwise, you're going to spend the rest of your life single and alone. This is just very frustrating for me because it's like I often hear stories about men who just absolutely have no personality beyond like one or two archetypes, and it's just not enough. If you really are interested in being in a relationship with somebody, then you need to have some other thing to carry you there, right?
Right. Well, and it should be a two-way street too. It shouldn't just
Yes.
be me, 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 me.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
we all like talking about ourselves sometimes, but it's important to also take interest in your partner.
Exactly. But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. Is Brian being too harsh on OP's dates? Or not harsh enough? Let's ask the Wheel of Judgment. Wheel of Judgment, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the judgment that Brian earns. Mildly inconvenienced. Thank you, Wheel. You're very kind for that.
The wheel has seen
Very
you.
kind. And New Boyster 1 says, not the jerk, it doesn't sound like a game to me. It sounds like a reasonable expectation that a potential partner show some curiosity or interest. And there Alstibia says, seriously, I was so confused by the end of the post. How is it a game to want to date people who are interested in you as much as you are interested in them? And OP replies, yeah, that's my error. I meant to put test at the end, not game, but I still do see it as a little test in my head to judge if the person is truly interested in me like I am with them. I don't mean it in a cruel way, and it's never verbalized as a test. It's just the way I see it. I mean, I actually could kind of feel differently about this whole thing if OP stood up in the middle of their date and was like, guess what? You failed the test. Throwing their napkin down and walking out or storming out or something like that with no explanation at all.
I mean, I think the explanation is key, but
Yeah.
like in that scenario, like I don't like the idea of leaving someone hanging, but I don't think it would even be bad to end the date and be like, you can't take a basic interest in another person. You don't deserve to finish this date.
Well, I mean, I certainly think that you are allowed to recollect your time from a date at a certain point, where if you feel like you're not getting anything out of this date and things aren't going, you know for a fact that you're not going to continue dating this person, at a certain point you can just say, we should call this, I know for a fact that I am not interested in you anymore. Thank you. Have a nice day. Have a nice life. I hope you find somebody who you are compatible with. And Tacos314 says, you're the jerk, kind of. Men tend not to communicate in that way. You may want a more back and forth style of communication. Men don't tend to play the 100 questions games and prefer more of a storytelling style. You can also just be going out with an awkward and shy guy. And OP replies, that's what I struggle with, I think. On the date that I mentioned, it was so difficult to keep up a conversation, so I felt it was necessary to ask questions to start up a new one, you know? But at the same time, sometimes I feel like struggling with the storytelling style with some men. Not all, but I get scared sometimes thinking that I may not find someone that I'm truly able to converse with like that with. But I do feel like on the first date, it's normal to be asking basically to get to know you type questions so that a regular conversation flow can flow from it. What do you think of that person and their comment?
I do not like their gross generalizations about men and women's communication styles. I mean, I think every person has a different one, but I don't think we can just dismiss kind of egocentric behavior because, like, even if you like to monologue a lot, and I'm someone who does like to monologue a lot, you should still be able to take interest in the other person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like Brian and I, we both have things we're really interested in, and we can like be perfectly okay listening to the other person. Like I can talk to Brian for like, I don't know, 20 minutes about butterflies and like, you know, but then like he can talk to me about computers for 20 minutes and there's like a balance. You can have this kind of storytelling style with a balance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe there's a certain level of socialization involved here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I mean, I've never had the problem of not asking questions when I've gone on dates. I think that it's pretty standard that you know that you're not supposed to just sit there and answer questions and not ask questions, right? I mean, I think that's basic communication 101 type of stuff that everyone should know by the time they get out to be an adult. So while I understand that this person may have, certain ideas from, a gendered perspective, I don't know that I share the same opinion, but it could also be a generational type of thing where, when I grew up, it was expected that you would have a conversation by talking back and forth and coming up with things. Maybe that has changed in the time since I was a wee lad.
Well, I feel like a lot of times, like I have social anxiety, so I understand the stress and pressure of like
Mm-hmm.
trying to when you talk under pressure. But also, I feel like a lot of times when someone's a good fit, the conversation will just kind of flow.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I mean, it wasn't like we even had to do a back and forth conversation when we started dating. Like we would naturally like talk to each other about things and ask each other questions, but it wasn't like an interview. Like, what do you do? What do you do? Like, you know, maybe there were questions like that every now and again, but just kind
Yeah.
of like a lot of it just flowed.
Yeah, well, I mean, and with people and conversations with me, I tend to like am able to get people to open up and communicate and whatnot. So, in general, I've never usually had a problem getting people to even talk to me. Even people who normally wouldn't, where they expect you to carry the conversation, I can usually find a way to get people to open up. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that. It sounds like OP is just not compatible with these individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, again, there's nothing wrong with letting them go. All right, folks, and our next letter is titled Today I Messed Up by Reprogramming the Call Mickey Mouse button on the Disney Store's phone to auto call my dad at work. So, when I was about 15, I was at a Disney store in a mall, and one of the features was a phone that you could call a different Disney character from, and they would have a fake/slash pre recorded conversation with the character. While I was using it, I noticed that the cover was loose and I pulled it up and I saw just a normal phone underneath. So I did what any dumb kid would do and I dialed my dad's work number and I said, "Hi." I didn't mention that I was at a Disney store or the way that I had called him. He was mildly annoyed and the short call ended. If only he knew what was coming. In actuality, by dialing his number, I had unknowingly reprogrammed the Mickey Mouse button to call my dad at work. So I walk away and I go about my afternoon. Important to note that this was in the early 1990s and very much pre-cell phone, meaning that until I got home several hours later, there was no way to contact me. And over those few hours, every few minutes, my dad's work phone began to ring, and a cute little kid would say something to my dad. "Does Mickey have a message for me?" Well, the first few times my dad was just confused and he hung up. But it didn't stop. In fact, the frequency began to pick up. And my dad, assuming that he was being relentlessly pranked while he was trying to work, finally lost his cool and yelled into the phone at some poor kid. Yeah, Mickey Mouse has a message for you. F off! Needless to say, the call stopped. I assumed that someone had reported it to the store and they got it sorted out. But when he told me the story later that evening, I just burst out laughing. Then I explained everything. It would be a lie to say that he immediately saw the humor in it, but he certainly does now. Alright folks, what do you think of this story?
I'm glad that they can find humor in this situation now.
It's such a great story. I mean, it probably was just that there was like some kind of call forwarding on this, and that in the end, all that happened is when he dialed that number, he changed the call forwarding because there wasn't like any fancy electronics in those, phones or anything like that. So it probably was just very dumb technology that had no way of knowing that it was calling his dad.
Yeah.
So I think it's absolutely hilarious now. And Glorious Pudding says, please tell me that your dad worked in a cubicle and the whole office heard that. And Dulce et Decorum Est says, I like thinking that the little kid looked visibly stunned after hearing when their parent asked them what happened, and he goes, Mom, you're not going to believe what that rat told me. Alright folks, unfortunately, I'm kind of out of time. I'm going to read like the NORAD one here, but there's a lot of good comments on here. Pax Nova says, the real famous example of this is when someone set up a number to call Santa and accidentally listed the phone for the switchboard for NORAD. Thankfully, the troops thought that it was hilarious and played along. That's how the NORAD Santa tracker started. And Disastrous Phrase 74 says, it was Sears in 1955. The story makes me smile every time I hear it. It's so cute. And Nookane says, there was a famous similar incident with a billboard and an auto repair service. Even though the business had published the number, they would not react until it started losing customers. Alright folks, it is tea time. Grab your beverages of choice. I've got some tea right here, and Amber, she has a joke.
Why was the pencil lauded at work?
The pencil was praised because it was practically preparing all the practical documents.
Because it was always on point.
Ooh, that's what I basically said.
And today is National Ballpoint Pen Day and also National Egg Roll Day.
Oh, make sure to go find yourself an egg roll, but don't put a ballpoint pen in it.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise that.
And I have the special guest tea. I have some matcha today. Alright folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Happy terrific Tuesday, spelled TWO. Amber, we need some kind of moral advice and or guidance, and please have it on carrying a date.
If you're having trouble carrying conversation in a date, maybe try mirroring the questions that your counterpart is asking you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea and a really great way of working through that. But thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Bye!